Good morning. I see some new faces. Hello, I'm Tanya. Nice to meet you. And those I know, good to see you too. So today is Mother's Day. And so I will weave this theme into the talk. And I'll expand the definition of mother to include all the growing and nurturing that we all do inside of ourselves and for others. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about more what I'll talk about, and then I'll come back to kind of a few reflections on motherhood before I start. But I want to share a sutta with you today. It's known as the ship, or the chick, the adze, and the ship. So I'm going to share that sutta, and it's one of the parts of the sutta is about chickens and hatching eggs. Yeah. And then, like I said, I'll sort of start with this theme of motherhood and then kind of dip in and out of that as I progress. I think I just want to put my hand on my heart when I think about mothering and I think about being mothered. It's not easy. And, it's also incredibly, it's been a huge part of my practice, and both dealing with my own internalized mother and dealing with myself as a mother. And all of us have the mother in us. All of us have the mother in us. So I read a quote this morning, and I'm sorry I don't have the name of the author, but I was just reading Marie Papanov. She's got this beautiful email she sends out, and she quotes an author who says about motherhood, it's hard to love and let go at the same time. And similarly, it's hard to provide safety and danger at the same time. Right? The love, safety, the letting go, the danger, all are important. We actually have to let our kids experience difficulty. We need to experience difficulty to grow. Right? So it's a very challenging thing. And So I'm wearing green. And I'm wearing green for two reasons. Well, one maybe, but green represents growth for me in nature. And I have a poem that my son wrote when he was in grade school. So I'll start with this. I love you the greenest, the color of all the leaves, the color of watermelon. And then I'll read you a different quote or a different poem by Rosemary Traumer. But before I go on to that, I'll say a little bit more about growth and this idea. I have a quote from Dr. Kamila Majid. And she was just interviewed in Tricycle magazine recently. And she says some beautiful things, and hopefully I'll come back to them, but I'll just read and reread this one quote now. We can recognize ourselves as part of the community of beings forever coming to know, forever unlearning what we thought was reality because we're growing. You're not growing if you know everything. So for me, this is a huge part of practice in life, is this ability to be present and to continue to evolve and grow and show up for the moment as it is, because it's always different. And we get pretty stuck in our ideas of what is, our beliefs, our expectations, how it should be. And we'll say more about that when we get to the sutta too. So here's the poem by Rosemary Traumer. It's called Motherhood. Today again I praise the beaver who spends her life building, rebuilding her lodge where her young will live, with small sticks and big sticks and tall solid trunks, with logs and rocks and mud. With her teeth she builds a home, builds it on moving water. Because rain, because snow, because warm, because cold, because flow, because flow, because flow. Her home is forever in need of repair. And so on a day when a surprise storm has flooded the stream and washed much of my lodge away, I honor the beaver, stalwart, resilient, habitual. I notice the longing to move to land. Then I gather new sticks of courage, stones of forgiveness, logs of compassion, and the deep sticky mud of love. I wade to the middle of the current. I, like all the mothers, I build this home again. So there's a theme in here, which is this, the flow, the changing flow, right, and growth. And in the poem, there's this one line where she's talking about the surprise storm, and it's washed away most of her lodge. And then she says, I noticed the longing to move to land, which to me is the desire to cling, to make things solid, to move out of the flow of life. So this is the sutta. We'll now move into the sutta, and I'll be going in and out and explaining some of the things that the sutta says. And just to say, I'll read the sutta and then I'll share what has come up for me, my reflections in response to the sutta. This is not to say this is the right interpretation of the sutta, but this is how this sutta helps me see my practice as it is right now. So as you hear the sutta, you may have other things that arise for you as well. Welcome them. It doesn't mean that they're not right. Okay? All right. So as usual, the suttas start with saying where they're at, where this is taking place, at Savatthi in this particular sutta. There the Blessed One said, I tell you, monks, it is for one who knows and sees that there is the ending of the effluence. So I'm going to come back to that and define that word for you. I'll just finish this section. For one who knows and sees what is there, the knows and sees, there's a little, the ending of the effluence. Who is it, right, who sees the ending of the effluence? They see such as form, its origination, its fabrications, its consciousness, such as its origination, such as its passing away. It is for one who knows and sees in this way that there's the ending of the effluence. So the effluence, the word comes from a Latin verb, effluere, to flow out. In an older meaning, an effluent was a stream of flowing out of a river or a lake. Nowadays, effluent almost always means wastes that pour out into water or air. So you might think of it as things that pollute or things that block. Right? So things that cause suffering from the practice perspective. On the night of his awakening, this is, I'm not reading the sutta right now, but on the night of his awakening, the Buddha focused his attention not on like concentration and all these altered states, but actually on the mental process of trying to develop skillful mental states. This would be the opposite of the effluence. So he was sitting down to cultivate skillful states of mind. And he did it in this way, which was to not reference himself, which is very important, it turns out. Because it turns out that when we start to think, I'm doing this, this is mine, this is me, we are clogging the flow. We stop things up. We pollute it with this identification, and we're clinging, and it really prevents this natural flow of life from happening and for being clear about what it is. So without referring to himself, right, he just worked on cultivating wholesome, skillful states of mind. So this is what the night he woke up, this was his task. All right, back to the sutta. So now he's he's saying this is what we do. We sit down and we cultivate this understanding. We see what's happening, right? We see the effluence end by noticing feeling, noticing our perceptions, not ours, I should take that word out of it, the way that we're fabricating, the consciousness that's created, seeing all this clearly, simply, without identification. And he says, even though, he's going to talk about another monk now, even though this wish may occur to a monk who's sitting down to meditate, I want to be free, essentially. But he's sitting without devoting himself to development. And I'll talk more about that. But developing essentially these skillful states of mind. So a monk that sits down and wants to be free, but hasn't devoted himself to developing skillful states, is not going to get free, is what essentially he says. And he says, why is that? Because of lack of developing. And then he lists the things that should be developed. And he lists this set of 7 qualities, or sets of qualities. The Buddha has lots of lists. Actually, kind of amazing. Some of these lists are really pretty powerful because they have this way of growing, building on each other, or leading, for being forward leading. And so there's these 7 sets of qualities that have been termed the wings of awakening. So these sets, these supportive qualities that apparently he developed that night, right, are the wings that carry us to freedom. They help us, We aren't caught in these effluents. And in other places in the suttas, the Buddha tells us in Majjhima Nikaya 103, he says, so this is what you think of me. You think of me as the Blessed One, sympathetic, seeking our well-being, and teaching the Dharma out of sympathy. This is how he was seen, and said to his followers, this is how you see me. He said, if that's how you see me, then you should train yourself in the qualities I have pointed out. So it's these qualities in particular. And so back to the ship, the adze, and the chick. We are back in this sutta. Am I bouncing around too much? Are you guys following me okay? Okay? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Suppose a hen has 8, 10, or 12 eggs. Okay? If she doesn't cover them rightly, warm them rightly, or incubate them rightly, then even though this wish may occur to her, that my chicks might break through the eggshells with their spiked claws or beaks and hatch out safely. So even though she has this wish, but if she hasn't covered them rightly, still it is not possible that the chicks will break through the eggshells. So for me, the Buddha is pointing to the fact that we can want to get free, but if we don't do the work, if we don't sit and cultivate and gestate. Not going to happen. And so then, there's this language in the sutta that says just this, that just like if the hen hasn't covered them, warmed them, incubated them rightly, in the same way, even though the monk may wish to be free, right? It's not going to happen because he hasn't been released from these effluents through lack of clinging. Not clinging to the sewage, the things that cause us suffering. And developing at the same time these 7 wings of awakening, one at a time perhaps, or several as they build. And then the Buddha goes on to say that if there's a monk who's practicing, and he doesn't have, or she doesn't have this wish to get free, her mind can still be released by developing these wholesome, skillful qualities and letting go. So we don't have to want to get free. We just have to practice. In the next section's about the hen, goes back to the hen. The hen doesn't have to want the eggs to hatch. The hen just has to sit on them rightly, right? So, of course, then he goes on to say, that hen has these eggs, sits on them, incubates them, warms them, doesn't want them to hatch, but they do, right? Because she has essentially done the things that need to be done. So let's take a minute to step out of the sutta and talk about chickens and eggs. This simile of chicken and eggs is, of course, very relevant to motherhood. But it's also just relevant to all of us have the capacity to develop and cultivate all kinds of states, all kinds of actions, all kinds of ways of being. And some of them require a lot of patience. We can't be sitting on our eggs, checking every 5 minutes. Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Is it here yet? Is it here yet? Right? Or cracking them open, or trying to help the egg. There's various stories about trying to help butterflies come out of cocoons, and it just doesn't work, right? Same with chicks. They need to get their way out of their eggs. So there's this poignancy for me around our practice and growth and life and watching our children or our loved ones and sitting back and letting there be this process happening, this undergoing, the flowing of the river, not trying to control it too much, right? And not getting it too blocked up, this love and letting go. And the incubation and the gestation, beautiful words, right? For all of us to think about. There's also sometimes you'll hear people talking about building a practice, and we're like, okay, it's like planting a seed and letting the seed grow in the garden. And then, okay, well, let me see, how are the roots, We have to just trust. There's a lot of trust that's required, tending, patience, trust, and the right conditions. We need the sun, we need the water, right? So just like the chicken creates the conditions, the chicken has the egg, but the egg really is maybe just a symbol for what is possible within us. All of us. Regardless of gender, regardless of fertility, it's just what is possible. deeply possible. And so this patience and this practice is, of creating these conditions is really our practice, and how we do it and how we understand that we're in this flow, and that we, consistently help ourselves to remember to let go of all the identification, to let go of the not wanting, to let go of the wanting, just this constant needing to keep meeting and meeting this moment. And Sayadaw U Tejaniya says this thing that is really, the Buddha talks about a lot too, but it's like the thing that starts to happen is if we sit long enough, the eggs hatch. And if we're present for that and aware when that happens, it's really, really rewarding and encouraging. And when we start to have wisdom about how we're showing up for our practice in life, the mind starts to feel joy as it starts to understand. As wisdom grows and as we see this process, we have joy, and it grows our faith and our trust. It's very, very, motivating for us. Bhikkhu Thanissaro talks about this whole, kind of idea of what the Buddha is talking about in terms of cultivating the skillful, and he uses the word karma, right? He says the principle of skillful karma formed both the how and the what of that awakening that the Buddha experienced. The Buddha was able to reach awakening only by developing skillful karma. And his understanding of the process of developing this skillful karma is what sparked the insights that constituted his awakening. So the Buddha then in the same sutta goes and offers this other simile to talk about this this process of growth and cultivation. And he talks about a carpenter, or the carpenter's apprentice. Just as when a carpenter or a carpenter's apprentice sees the marks of his fingers or thumb on the handle of his adze, but does not know, today my adze handle wore down this much, or yesterday it wore down that much, or the day before yesterday it wore down this much, right? So over time, tools, wooden tools, handled tools that are handled over and over again, they wear. And slowly there are imprints in the wood from the hands. And, the monk, or the Buddha says that in the same way, the monk doesn't know, today my effluence wore down this much, right? Or yesterday they wore down that much. The day before, it happens, and eventually we start to see some evidence of it. So an example of how this, kind of can happen on retreat, for example, or in our practice, is that, if we keep staying present, if we keep meeting this moment, if we keep staying in the flow and with mindfulness, right, we can start to notice the mind states that arise. We can start to witness it. And the closer we are to the moment, the more closely we are to witnessing the hatching. And for me, a really beautiful place for practice is bringing awareness to suffering, which I like to translate as pain. Some of you may have heard me talk about sort of pain, which is a messenger and necessary and a signal for us to pay attention. And so I really like to notice when I'm suffering, when I'm feeling pain. And then when I do that and bring my awareness to it, I can sort of soften into it with curiosity, opening to what's happening. And then sometimes there's a moment of just all of a sudden going, oh, I get it, right? And maybe it's as simple as, I just have this ability to see the thought pattern that's going on that's causing suffering. It's just this chain of thoughts that I've been caught in, and it's sort of this loop, and it just keeps hurting. And there can be this moment of just going, oh, I don't have to keep thinking that way. And when you see this in this right way, there's this huge energy that can arise, joy that can arise, this feeling of like, okay, I have a choice here. And it's like putting your foot down instead of going over here, it's like going over here. And all of a sudden you're just walking on a different path. Your mind is just in a different path. Because you've decided somehow enough of your system, enough of your awareness, enough of your wisdom and your heart have all gone, I don't want to do that anymore, it hurts. And if we can then witness, oh look, this shift is there, it feels better. It feels better. We're recognizing the birth of wisdom and faith from meeting suffering. And that faith, that joy, brings energy or joy. And that energy supports our mindfulness, our ability to keep staying present. So, yeah. It's not going to happen every time. But it will happen if you stay in the practice, stay present, right? And sometimes it's a big letting go, and sometimes it's a little letting go, but wow, every little letting go is powerful, especially if we stay with it and appreciate it and choose it. Because we can also so quickly just go back to what was painful. So easy, so easy. So then there's one more simile in this sutta. It's about a ship. And the sutta goes like this. Just as when an ocean-going ship, rigged with masts and stays, after 6 months on the water, is left on the shore for the winter, it stays weathered by heat and wind, moistened by the clouds of the rainy season, and it easily will wither and rot away. In the same way, when a monk dwells devoting himself to development, his fetters easily wither and rot away. So for me, this sutta really emphasizes, for me, again, right, this sitting with suffering, sitting with pain, just sitting, because I love this, like under the weather, the sun. The sun to me is a symbol of awareness, of seeing, of bringing light, putting our light on something, our awareness on something. And and then the weathering of it, just this awareness, just the letting it be seen. And to me, the rain and the storms feel so much like dukkha to me, right? And so sitting with this wisdom of seeing and feeling the difficulty, this, consistently over time, his fetters easily wither and rot away. The weather does the work of letting go. Make sense? And something that's, I think, really important for us to know when I talk about like sitting and being with our pain or our suffering, there's a lot of things going on in life that are very difficult. Inside of me, around me. But I can be okay, I can be comfortable when that's happening. I don't have to be depressed. I don't have to be miserable. as long as I'm growing, as long as I'm practicing, right? I know it's going to be okay. Being a mom has been a huge motivation for me to focus my attention directly on suffering and on cultivating skillful states of being. A huge motivation. It has given me so much importance and urgency around my practice at times. Just deep, deep urgency. You watch your children growing, you go through difficult times, you're like, I've got to get this right. I have got to get through this. And we can't, we can see things and know our patterns and our reactivity, and we can't just stop it. We can't just, make it disappear. It has to weather. It has to be seen under the light. It has to sit on the shore. It takes time. So to reinforce this point, there's back to Majjhima Nikaya 2, all the effluents, the Buddha says, and I'm going to give this a genderless pronoun, they attend appropriately. This is stress. This is the origination of stress. This is the cessation of stress. This is the way leading to the cessation of stress. This is how we attend, and this is the Four Noble Truths. Just practicing, attending with the understanding of these Four Noble Truths. And then the Buddha goes on to say, as they attend appropriately in this way, the fetters are abandoned, the effluents are abandoned. So, we all have our things that we want to get free of, right? I hope. I was back to Camilla Majid. I was really inspired by the way she framed this. And she wrote a book and was interviewed by Tricycle, and the book is about justice and racism. And this is one of the things that I aspire to be free of, right? Is the conditioning of bias. And she said, she believes for her the fight for justice can be and has been joyful. And this is, this is what the Buddha says, right? That if we engage with our dukkha, with wisdom, right? If we see it and we see that there's another way, faith arises, energy arises, joy arises. And then she says this beautiful thing. She says, in her view, or this is the Tricycle author, in her view, justice is inexorable from joy, and it involves accessing the inner joy that is available to us when we treat ourselves and others as enlightened beings. She says, the more we step out of what we believe to be our comfort zone, the bigger that zone grows until the whole world is our comfort zone. But it's not comfort in the sense of, I feel good all the time. We're going to be very distressed if we expect to feel good all the time. And this is that quote that I shared earlier that I'll share again. When we can recognize ourselves as part of the community of beings forever coming to know, forever unlearning what we thought was reality because we're growing. You're not growing if you know everything. And we have to really counterbalance the mind's natural tendency to to learn, right? In the way that the mind learns. For efficacy, right? The brain learns things and then stores it in memory. And the older we get, the more we've got stored. So the more we have to unlearn. And you know, we get taught things from all kinds of sources, directly and indirectly. It could be an advertisement on TV, it could be, you know, a parent, it could be a friend, who knows, right? It all comes in, and somehow some of it gets really stored and becomes a reference point for us. Our beliefs about what it is to be a mother, about other people, about ourselves, all of these things have been grown over time and very unconsciously are stored within ourselves. And none of us are free of this. We're all subject to it. So if we can bring a lot of curiosity to witnessing what the mind is generating, and bring more of the awareness of right here, right now. What is this in this moment that's happening? We start to help uncouple what was stored, most of it without choice. And we can recouple if we stay present with what's happening now, with what's in front of us now, with what's here now. The unlearning and then the learning. But awareness is essential for the whole process. Being aware. And I love this, forever unlearning what we thought was reality because we're growing. Because it is kind of every time you meet a tree, it's a new tree. If you don't watch out, you're going to just see it as the word tree, however it's stored in your mind, right? It just becomes this thing. A thing, instead of something unique and beautiful and green and alive and growing. So I think that's the end of my talk. Thank you all. We have a couple minutes, so if anyone wants to ask a question. Yeah, Jeannie, can you get a mic so that it's hearable to others?
Hello, my name's Jeannie, and I really like this talk. What you're just describing at the end, is that what you would call skillful karma? Because I never heard that before, skillful karma.
Well, skillful karma, so I didn't really go into the, 7 wings of awakening, but that's like the qualities of, for example, the 5 faculties are one of the 7 lists. So they're faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, calm or concentration, and wisdom. So these are some of those 7 wings of awakening. So that would be skillful karma, to have cultivated these skillful ways of being present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want?
Tanya, was the entire sutta about the beers and the chickens from MN number 2?
It's, no, I think it's Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya 22-101.
Which one?
Samyutta.
Samyutta.
22.101.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the forever unlearning what we thought was reality.
Isn't that great? I love that one too. Okay, question over there.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Jen. My question is how you referenced faith. I was raised as a Catholic, so I'm familiar with what faith has been to me.
Great.
But I don't understand it in
Great.
this scenario.
Beautiful. Great question. I love talking about this too, so happy to answer. So first of all, there's 3 words that can be alternately considered for me faith, which is faith, trust, which has been my harbor, and confidence. And maybe it can be thought of as a continuum. And so, and what the Buddha teaches us is that we don't have to he doesn't want us to have just faith in what he says. He wants us to take what he says and practice with it so that we grow trust in the practice itself and that we see the unfolding of the practice. We witness things like I was describing through the practice. So our faith then over time becomes absolute confidence. Yeah. So don't ever just accept anything that is taught to you, in other words. And the Buddha wouldn't even answer questions about is there a soul or not a soul or any of those kinds of things. Great.
Hi, my name is Abhi, and I like the idea of forever unlearning things,
Uh-huh.
but it invokes a sense of conflict within me, because the way I understand it, the Buddha says that look at things like processes rather than solid
Right.
objects.
Right.
But then that directly contradicts with the way we live life, because our sense of security comes from things being certain way.
Yeah.
And so how do we find a balance between like a conventional life that we people live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a problem to live a conventional life. It's not a problem to love people, to have family, to have commitments, to have jobs, to have things. It's not a problem to have desires. The problem lies in our attachment to those things and our clinging to those things and our wanting to control those things and thinking that they're ours. So it's really about our relationship to conventional life, not the objects themselves. It's about our relationship to life and letting life flow, letting people change, letting ourselves change even when we're not really wanting to sometimes. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
No.
Well, it's not going to resolve your problem. That's for sure. It's not going to make it easier until you have moments where you see the pain that's being caused by the attachment. So notice where you're clinging. Notice where you're wanting things to be different than the way they are or not wanting them to change. And track that space, because that's the space of where dukkha will arise, where suffering will arise, where stress will arise, where pain will arise, and that is your teacher. And we start to then, you have to this is where we have to keep unlearning, because if we are looking at what's happening and we keep from a fixated point of view, we're not going to see the truth of what's happening, why there's pain there, and then we're never motivated to let go.
Thank you. That was
Yeah,
helpful.
thank you. One more behind you.
Hi, I just wanted to express my gratitude. My daughter and I have been listening to talks from Insight Meditation Center for like 14 years.
Oh, wow.
And this is our first time in person.
Oh, welcome.
I've come here before and like just sat under that tree. So when you talked about like talking to the trees and acknowledging the tree, I'm like, that tree out front is really special, like with the bench. And I just sat here and like, was really present in the moment, and I feel like I'm home. And you talked about remaining teachable, and like I was just talking about that last night with people. I was like, the more you know you don't know, right? Yeah. And I'm just full of gratitude. It's Mother's Day. I'm a mom, and your share. Everything was just wonderful.
Great, thank
all I
you.
have. Thank you.
All right, happy, happy day to you all, inner mothers.